Good evening, beautiful woman. Welcome to Isaya's Inspiring Evenings, a podcast full of goddess series, witches' secrets, colors of women and fairy seasons to integrate serenity, abundance, joy, and magic into your life. I am Isaya Bell, creatrix, magical pragmatic inspiration mentor, tech goddess teacher, and traveling priestess. And this podcast aims to accompany you for peaceful and inspiring evenings. Isaya's Inspiring Evenings has had various iterations and styles and is published irregularly. Subscribe to the podcast on the platform of your choice to be informed of the publication of each new episode. If you like this podcast, please support it by leaving stars, blue thumbs, and reviews on whatever platform you listen to me. In 2024, there are going to be 5 series in it, for now. All different, all aiming to inspire the audience, all telling stories, each complementing each other. One series titled Women Lighting the Way is about women's stories, centering around the past or future speakers from the various Women Lighting the Way summits, adding to the virtual library of women's stories and providing a much-needed counterpoint to the many men's stories going around in our world of patriarchy. This is one of those episodes, and I am happy to invite you to listen to the story of Ruth Sandoval, recorded in 2021, entitled Weaving My Way Back to the Light. Enjoy!
Hello, beautiful woman. I'm so happy to be here at Women Lighting the Way, this summit of 13 women who have come here to share our stories. When I first thought about coming to Women Lighting the Way and being a speaker, I had to ask myself, what is it that I want to share? What is my story? So I'll begin and we'll see where that goes. I am a life coach and a coach trainer by profession. I think I've always been a coach. So when I was a child, I had a lot of intuitive ability, and people would come to me, other kids, people all through my lives, and would come and just tell me things about their lives. Some of them were powerful stories. And being young, I didn't really know what to do with that. But as I grew older and as I found that coaching was a thing, and that people could become a coach, that's when I decided, yes, that's exactly what I want to do. Life wasn't always easy. And even though people came to me with what their problems were, what their issues were, when they needed something to talk about, I wasn't always in the place where I could help. Very difficult childhood for me. And challenges with a mother who was diagnosed with mental illness very shortly after I was born, a father who met his challenges with alcohol, 3 siblings who were younger than me. And that created for me a lot of dynamics when I was young, lots of anxiety, lots of fear, but also having to step up and having to step up with courage sometimes to meet the needs of myself and my siblings when my parents couldn't be available. Everything really weighed on me after a while. And, things got kind of tough. And by the time I was 12, I had such anxiety and was really losing hope. And at 12 years old, I really was considering what it would be like to just not be here. And everything that kept me going was outside of me, and I was starting to lose my connection to that. But I remember one day when I was really down, and a voice inside of me said, it's important that you feel. It's important that you keep going. And so I did. And I grew into adulthood. I had 2 children. By the time I was 21, I think I got married because that's what people did back then. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. And I had these children and they were beautiful. And I had a home and I had a family. And I continued on. Troubles still continue to follow me, though, because my anxiety just grew and grew and grew. And habits that we create when we're meeting challenges and we're meeting difficulties when we're young, those become survival habits that are very important to have when we're young. But as we grow older and as we become more independent and we have more control over our lives, sometimes those habits and those ways of being are no longer useful, but it's really hard to let go of those. So I was filled with anxiety, filled with, oh, I don't know, depression, just feeling that I didn't have a compass. And it felt to me like everybody else had a compass except me. I made my way through all my challenges kind of one at a time, and I would deal with them, but none of it seemed to make sense and none of it seemed to come together. And I would go to different people and say, "What do you think? What should I do? What do you think?" And I kept asking other people for direction because I didn't know really why I was doing what I was doing, why I was in this life, why I was busy being a mother, and why I was doing whatever I was doing. It was, oh gosh, I felt so lost. And that went on for a long time. By the time I was 28, again, very tired. And I remember looking in the mirror one morning and asking myself, is this all there is? And yet I knew in my mind that I had a life and I had people in it and I had two beautiful children, but still there was something inside that just wasn't connected. And I was so used to dealing with crisis. And at age 28, I had a near attempt at making the decision to leave this planet. And just as I was getting ready and just as I was putting things in order, I heard a helicopter. And my natural curiosity made me stop and look outside. And the helicopter came to where I lived. And there was a swimming pool there, and a woman had nearly drowned in a pool. So she was being airlifted. And I saw her loved ones and the grief and despair that they were going through as she was being airlifted away. And I realized that a way out for me wasn't really a way out, that that wasn't the answer. And that's what saved me. That was divine intervention, I feel. That was a sign for me to keep going. And at about age 28, I decided to take part in trying to find answers and to walking a path that was different, that didn't necessarily have to have the same patterns that I had when I was younger. And several years passed. I went through two divorces during that time. My children grew, they were grown, and I still had that lingering feeling of, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a compass. Because back when I was a child, I knew things and I knew that I could connect and I could feel other people's energy, but there was nothing around me to confirm that. And when I would ask other people what they thought about that, or if I could bounce that off of them, what I just saw or felt, I was looked at as though I were kind of crazy. And so, you know, with the mental illness going on in our home, I didn't want to be considered to be not all there or sane. So I just put that away. As I grew into my 30s and continued to search and search, I went into my 40s. And at age 42, made a decision that nobody needed me and I was done. And I had an evening where I had an experience that I just can't explain today. In this experience, I was at the lowest of lows in my entire life. And when I was in my home by myself, all of a sudden everything went gray. I couldn't see color anymore. It was black and white, and it was fading very quickly. And I realized that I was leaving without doing anything to myself, without doing anything but wishing myself gone. I was actually losing touch with what was around me. And that woke something up in me. There was a seed. There was a seed of hope. I was always an optimistic person, no matter what. And there was a seed of hope And in my fear and at that time and in my panic, I went outside and I literally put my feet in the ground and I held onto a tree. When I did that, I just breathed and I held onto the tree until I could feel things coming back and I could see color again and I could feel myself back in my body and back on the earth. And it was that experience that made me decide I'm going to stay and I'm going to be part of helping. So after that, I packed up and I was exhausted. And I packed what I could put in my car and I drove to my family's land in New Mexico, in northern New Mexico. And we have a little ranch there. And my father lives there. There's a little guest house. And I remember just pulling in and stopping and letting him know I was there. And my directions to him were do not come and look for me until I come out. I pulled into the driveway. I went into the house without unpacking, without getting anything. And I literally crashed and burned. And I stayed there for 2 weeks. It was 2 weeks before I could come out, before I could really unpack. I only had the essentials. And it was from that really low, low place that I began to try to understand what my life had been about. And all this time, from the time I was a young adult to where I was then, I had kids, I had gone to college, I had a college degree, I did all the things that people do. I had different jobs, I connected with different people, but it was this deep, deep, deep feeling of despair that I just couldn't get rid of. So when I crashed and burned in New Mexico, it took a while, but I ventured into town. So our property is 18 miles out of town, beautiful country. And I started taking little trips into town and dipping my toe into being with people again. And I wandered into a weaving shop. And this weaving shop was a studio. It had, oh my goodness, about 12, maybe 12 weaving looms, music playing, beautiful music, high ceilings, fans going on the ceilings, and so many people weaving, just weaving to the music. And you could hear the shuttles going back and forth, back and forth. Something about that made me want what they had. And after doing some inquiring and after talking with them, I was able to sign on to learn how to weave. This weaving style is the Rio Grande style of my ancestors. And while I learned to weave, I learned all about the history. I learned all about where I came from. I learned about the designs and what they meant. And most of all, with every pass of the shuttle, as I wove in the wintertime with the fire going and the fans going and the music, little by little, I started piecing things back together and realized that every piece and part of my life was so important. And every piece and part of my life was to be honored. It was sacred. And that I just didn't know how to connect with who I was. After that, I learned how to connect with my intuition more. I learned to honor who I am. I was able to go back into the world and begin to do things that I like to do. And shortly after that, I learned that I could become a life coach. And before that, a life coach really didn't exist. That wasn't a profession in my early years. But later it became a profession. And when I found out that I could learn to become a life coach, that turned me around. And I realized that I was a life coach and I always had been. I had been a champion for my siblings during our very difficult times growing up. I had been a champion for friends, for people in my life, a champion for coworkers, and always looking at the bright side, always looking at the optimistic ideas and loving when people would be able to integrate their own wisdom and pull themselves up and become even more. of who they are. So that's what brought me to coaching. That's what brought me to weaving. And after a while, I coached and coached, and then I was asked to train coaches for the organization I worked with. And I learned how to train coaches. And I found that I loved so much helping other people to become that beacon or that lighthouse for others. And in doing that, it prompted me to design my own coach training program. And that's what I have today. I have Coaching Wisdom Coach Training Program. It's accredited by the International Coaching Federation. And I'm so proud and happy to be able to offer that to other people who want to be that light and help others as coaches. During this time, I combined my weaving, my love of creativity, some design work, and also it was journaling. So as I was journaling, I was getting messages from myself, my true self, messages from spirit. And I was able to design these wisdom cards, and I'll just hold those up. So these are weaving wisdom cards that came through me. It's a bit of a mystery why they came, how they came, because it wasn't something that I had chosen to do. I was actually going to write a book about what I didn't know. I just felt that I really needed to write. And as I was writing every morning, I was finding that I wasn't getting a book. And I was pretty irritated and frustrated and asking, what am I supposed to be doing here? And I heard that inner voice say, start with cards. And I thought to myself, start with cards. I don't know anything about cards. Although I loved Oracle cards and I owned many decks, but I thought, how am I going to do cards? But little by little, as I wrote and journaled, I found words pop out to me, which became these cards. These are cards that I created for coaching and for working with others. And they have a word on them, an intention behind the word, and a powerful question. Coaching uses lots of powerful questions because when we ask a question as coaches, we don't want to know yes and no answers. And those answers are not for us. The powerful probing questions are for the person who's being coached. And coaching the way I learned to coach is called co-active coaching. And that's coaching in partnership with the person that you coach. So if I coach with you, I'm going to draw my own wisdom and we're going to draw your wisdom and we're going to listen and answer questions, deep questions. And through that, your wisdom comes pouring through and you have answers for yourself. And in that process, I help to guide the process. We start with the story now. The story now is what you see, what your experience is now. And then we look at possibilities for the future story. Where do you want to go? What is it that you want to do? And once we have a clear vision of that, that's where the coaching happens. It happens between the here and now and the there and then. It's this space. When we look at those possibilities and start to really see what your competencies are, what your successes are, what your wisdom is, then we create the future story. And the future story doesn't have to be something big and large and overarching. It could be, or the future story could be change you want to make right here, right now. Coaching is all about taking action. And I've heard it said over and over that coaching without an action is like having just a nice conversation, which you could have with anybody. So the coaching process that I use and that I have created, that I use in my coach training program, is all about story. What's the story now? What's the potential future story? How are we going to get there? And we repeat that over and over, taking step after step after step until you get to where you want to go, until you find that joy and be able to live your truest and truer self. So that's, in a snapshot, what we do in coaching. I always thought that my life was like being lost in a forest. If you can picture a dense, deep, dark forest, my life was like that. And I kept going up different pathways and not finding my way out and running into walls and asking passersby, which way should I go? But nobody knew the way that I should go. They had lots of advice, well, you should go this way. And I'd go that way and it wouldn't be right for me. And as a coach, I feel that the way that I bring light and share my light with others is that because I have found my way through the forest and into the light, that I am like the voice that goes back and helps you by finding your own way. Everyone has their own way from where they feel they're in darkness to the light. It's not the same for anyone, and no two coaching sessions are the same. So, through life coaching and through my love of humans and joy and my optimism for there always being a reason, there's always a reason to move forward, to live that dream. That's what fuels the fire in coaching. And that's why I love it so much. So I wanted to share that that's what I do with you. It's like a compass. It's helping you to fine tune your own compass and realizing that yours isn't like anyone else's. You may be going to the same place someone else is, but you have your own way of getting there and the own way that works for you. So we're looking at story now, future story, way to get there, and how to get unstuck. I've created a wonderful little mini workshop called How to Get Unstuck Without Hiring a Coach. And I'll put it in a link so that you can see it. And it's a wonderful way to begin to get yourself unstuck. And then if you decide that you want someone to walk along with you and to help you find your own ways of wisdom to your own ways of truth, then you can work with a coach, you can work with a healer, you can work with somebody else. So that's my story in a nutshell. It's much longer, much deeper than that, but we don't have time for that, do we? So I would like to now gift you by pulling a card, one of my wisdom cards. On the back of it is a weaving that I designed. And that's a weaving that I designed when I was lost and confused. And each piece and part represents some good, some difficult, some challenges, some joy, all different things. I'd like to pull a card for us today to leave you with the thought and to share with you how I use them. So what I do is I take a deep breath, I connect. And the card for today is dreams. I'll read that card to you. Dreams can be the inspiration that fuels the things that bring you the most satisfaction in life. Dreams can come while we're asleep, and dreams can come while we're awake. How do your dreams shape your reality? What a beautiful thought for the end of this talk. I'd like to thank you so much for being here. If you want to contact me, if you have questions, I welcome them. You can come see me at my website. It's ruthsandoval.com. And if you'd like to email me, if you'd like to message me directly, shoot me an email, ruth@ruthsandoval.com. And I believe there will be something in the notes after this that will show you how to get in touch with me. I want to send you nothing but blessings today. Thank you so much for joining us at Women Lighting the Way. We're all women lighting the way.
That's it for this episode. The next one is still in creation. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, if you want to support this podcast, share, subscribe, and leave stars, blue thumbs, and a review on whichever platform you listen to. If you want to be accompanied in the change processes that life offers you, if you want to live a goddess life daily and participate in the awakening of feminine energy in the world, know the secrets of witches, and apply the rituals of fairies in your daily life, contact me on my website isayabell.com. You can also subscribe to my newsletter to be informed of all the news in the real and virtual world of Isaya. You will, of course, find this podcast on all platforms: Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, etc., but also on YouTube and on my website, isayabell.com, on the podcast page.